My mom divorced my dad, took $500,000 from him, and stole $40K plus from me. I don't know how or when it all started. A few years ago, my family was a happy all-American household. I, at the time, 17 mem, had 3 sisters and my 2 parents. My parents had been sleeping separately for some time and claimed it was due to my father's snoring habits. After a year and a half of that, all of a sudden during dinner one night, my mother stood up and announced she had something to say. She went on to tell all of us that she felt she wasn't part of our family. My siblings and I were always out of the house for various reasons, and the intimacy between my father and her had turned into a passionless contract marriage. My mother, since marrying my father, was a stay-at-home mom. She then went on to announce that my parents were going to divorce in the next few months and that we needed to decide which parent we wanted to live with. After a month went by, my oldest sister, 19, moved out and in with her fiancé. At the same time, my 2 younger sisters, 14, 12, decided they were taking my mother's side and staying with her. Originally, I said I wanted to stay in my childhood home and finish out my senior year of high school in my hometown. All of a sudden, my father took me aside one night and told me my mother had stated she did not want me in the house and cannot take care of me and my siblings at the same time. This struck me hard, as I had never even noticed my mother wanted nothing to do with me. He asked me where I wanted to move and assured me he will make the effort to support my decision. I chose to move a few towns over, approximately 45 minutes away, to a new town. After the move, a few months went by without me ever talking to my mother, and school was about to start. This was in 2014 when Bitcoin started rocketing in value. When I was a sophomore in high school, a friend of mine discovered we could purchase various items online using Bitcoin. You can use your imagination as to what they were. And he had passed suddenly and unexpectedly, leaving a few $1,000s of cheap, useless Bitcoin in a joint wallet. Once I saw all the Bitcoin news, I figured out how to access the wallet and realized there was roughly $300K worth in the wallet. I quickly figured out how to liquidate it. All my life, I only ever had one bank account that I would cash my measly part-time bagger cashier checks into and pay my phone bill through. So I decided to put $50K into the account for safekeep and hid the other amount in a shoebox in my room. Bitcoin was still sketchy, and I was worried the cash would be seized, but since I never changed my address when I moved at my bank, they kept sending my statements to my old house, where my mother and sisters lived. Almost half a year passed, and I'm about to begin my second semester of 12th grade when reality set in. I was going to need to pay for college and a place to live upon graduation. As my father had informed me, the month after I graduate, I need to move out. Before you attack him, I wasn't the best child, but while living with him, he rarely came around the house, and I would only see him once or twice a month, as his lifestyle had changed to drinking every night and staying with his girlfriends. I don't blame him. So with reality bearing down on me, I decided to consolidate my assets and set up a plan. I still had roughly $200K from the cash I stashed away and wanted to invest that money while living off the $50K, plus another $20K I had managed to save up in my account. This was when I made a call to the bank to have my address changed so I can start tracking my account. Upon calling them, I was given information that felt like a cold bucket of water being dumped on my head. The balance, by my calculation, should have been close to $75K, enough to buy a new vehicle and lease an apartment by my school of choice, as well as pay for my tuition. The man that took my call informed me my account was at a balance of $12K with monthly withdrawals ranging between $5 to $7K, with one month being close to $15K. I was speechless. I immediately told him to freeze the account and send me statements so I can file for fraud. A week goes by and I received the statements in the mail and called the fraud department. After having a short conversation with them, they informed me all withdrawals were made by unauthorized persons on the account. How could I have never known? The account was a youth account that required a legal adult to be on there. The legal adult was no other than my mother. I had never told my parents about the money I got from cryptocurrency and had planned to basically disappear, graduate college, and move far away. I didn't know what to do. If I went to my father, I was afraid he was going to get mad at me and report the cash to the police. He was deathly afraid of any illegal activities, or kick me out on the spot as I had turned 18 recently. So I decided to show up to my mother's house, UN announced. Upon arriving at my mother's house, the door was locked, but her and her boyfriend's vehicles were there. I beat on the door until she yelled back, "She doesn't want me there," and that if I didn't leave, she would call the police. I immediately realized she knew exactly what she had done, and I went into a fit of rage. As I stood there beating down the door in a teary fit, she was actively screaming at me to leave and that she never wanted anything to do with me. I finally snapped and yelled back that I would get her back for what she did. I then got back in my car and left. On my way home, I was called by the local police department from my hometown and asked to go there immediately for questioning. I complied in hopes I could bring the theft of my money into light and have it returned to me. When I arrived, there was a police officer outside taking pictures of one of my mother's wheels, and I knew she had done something to make the police get involved. An officer, also a family friend, came out and escorted me inside to a room where my mother was sitting on the other side of a glass wall. He told me my mother was requesting a restraining order against me for herself and my two younger sisters. He then stated that according to my mother, before I got to my childhood home, her vehicle was all in order, and after I left, some of the lug nuts on her driver's side wheel had been loosened. What the fuck? And I told him I had nothing to do with it. He then showed photos of small dents on my mother's front door from me beating on it in anger, to which I admitted was myself, and that she had stolen thousands of dollars out of my account. My mother, in an angry panic, immediately interjected and said that she had put that money in there and she had been using that to pay the mortgage and tend for my siblings as she was searching for a job at the time. She claimed she was the account holder and that it was money from the divorce settlement. The police took a look at the statements I had in the car and disagreed that the money was in fact deposited by me, but because it was a youth account and she was an account holder, that she legally had the right to use it as she pleased. I was so defeated, I didn't know what else to say, so I sat silently. I was given documents to sign and told I had a court date in 2 weeks for the restraining orders to be finalized. Until then, I had a no-contact order between my mother and younger sisters. After leaving, I withdrew the remaining balance of $7,989.30. She had gone and unfroze the account, as well as made another $5,000 withdrawal. Defeated, I simply waited for my court date. 2 weeks goes by and I arrive to court. After the opening information is presented, the judge begins to go over the why for the order. He says my mother claims I had threatened her life and her assets, as well as threatened my younger sisters via text and phone calls. All not true. But thankfully, after reading this, he asked for her evidence, which she could not provide, and dismissed that information. Upon dismissing this information, he stated that he can issue a restraining order for my mother but cannot issue one for my younger sisters, unless they request it. So my younger sisters are called upon to stand up while my mother is whispering things into their ears, likely attempting to manipulate them. My whole life I was very close with my middle sibling, 15 now, and she burst out crying in pain that my mother was a liar and that she was stealing from me and that she missed me dearly. She said she doesn't want a restraining order and wished things would just go back to normal. My baby sister followed suit and cried out that this was terrible and that she didn't want to be a part of the family anymore. After the judge was able to silence them, he asked them to step outside. He told my mother he doesn't know what this is all about, and that he hates the idea of forcing a family to split by court order, but he is required to approve her restraining order for a minimum of 1 year. He also stated that the restraining order requested for my siblings was denied. As we're leaving the courtroom, the last thing my mother said to me for the next 3 years was, "This is all your fault. I needed that money to care for your sisters and keep the house. When you grow up one day, you'll understand I did what was best for all of you." I simply told her back, You did what was best for you, not what's best for me. You're not my mother, and from this day on, you'll never see me again. I'll post the last half of this in the next post.